So we have the data now, and it's time to learn how to get that data into our JavaScript script so we can actually parse it. So we can pull it apart, we can fix any inconsistencies in the data, and ultimately so we can like slot in the data together. So we can stick the CSV with all our McDonald's locations in, somehow get it working with the US state boundary stuff. So one of our first things is going to be changing this spreadsheet from its Excel format into a CSV and then into a JSON. Okay, so we have to change it from this plain spreadsheet isn't readable by a script. So the first thing we're going to do is when we have something like this in Google Sheets, we can go to download, and right there it has download as CSV. So we can hit that, and we're going to end up with a file a little bit like this one I have here. So we can see here it comes out as a comma separated values. So there's just all the headings with commas in between them. And then we have all the states, and the first number will be the number of McDonald's. And all the rest of the numbers we don't really care about, but it doesn't really harm us to have the rest in there. Now we have it like this. Now we want to get it to be a JSON, and there's a couple of ways we could do it. We could use a library to do it, like we could download some JavaScript and then do some special stuff with it. But in this case, it's just one file. So using one of these sites like CSV to JSON, and literally all I do is Google change my CSV to a JSON, works just fine. So if I just come and I just Control A, Control C for highlight it all and copy it all and paste it in here and then press convert, and boom, we can see it converts it over. We get it in our JSON format. So you can see here it's an array of objects, and each object has a property: state, number of McDonald's, number of payday lenders, and whatever. We only really care about these two, right? But now we can just download this or save it. We're just going to press download, and we get this file. We move that over, and we will have a file that looks like this. I just named it McDonald's per state, and I have it all in a little folder. I have our index.html, I have the CSV, which we don't actually need to keep anymore. I just have it there for the example. We have our US states as well, which I had downloaded from that website we looked at last time, where we have, it's just this big GeoJSON, and then we have our McDonald's per state. Okay, so now we need to load this data in. And this is going to involve doing a little bit more with our development environment than we've done so far. So far, when we've had our development environment, all we've done is literally just like open this file. So I've gone to my Explorer, gone here, and I've just like double-clicked this and opened it. But when I open it here, when I'm trying to load an external file, I'm going to get this error that just says failed, and it says blocked by CORS policy. Cross-origin requests. So CORS is this error that we run into a lot as web developers. I may have mentioned it before. It's been a while that I've been making this course, so I forget everything I've talked about. But the CORS error is a fairly common thing we're going to run into. Now, we don't have to totally understand exactly what CORS means. I mean, it's kind of complicated, but basically it's a security thing that browsers do, that you can only load files from certain hosts, certain servers, things like that. Basically, this file is not online. And so it's saying, oh, there's a CORS policy. You don't have permission to fetch this file. You can imagine if a browser tried to fetch a file from your local computer, that wouldn't be a good thing. It could like modify, get some kind of personal information or something. So it blocks it. So we have to then make a little mini web server on our computer in order for this to work fully. Now, there's a lot of ways to set up a little web server, okay? And the reason we're doing this is because I have this little thing called a fetch call, which we're going to look at a little bit more. But first, that's just what we're doing. That's how we get a bit of information from like an external file. We use this thing called fetch. But fetch won't work if we don't have a little server running. You know, if we really wanted, we could just take this whole JSON and just paste it into here as a variable, like let big JSON equals, and then just paste this whole thing in, and that would be fine. In this case, it's actually probably fine. It might be easy, but I really want to demonstrate this fetch thing and making a little local server, because this is how you're properly going to do something like this. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I used to, before I knew how to do a local server, I didn't do this for years. I would literally upload via FTP, like we went over before, every single time I did a change, because as long as it's uploaded, all the files are uploaded on a website, you probably won't get a CORS error. But when it's locally on your computer, you will. So I would copy in the variable here, or I'd upload it every time. And it's a big hassle, and it's really slow, and it's just not the right way to do this in the long term. So we're going to have to use the command line. Now I'm working on a Windows machine, so I'm using something, you could use PowerShell, or you can use the, Windows has its PowerShell like this, which you can open up. And sometimes it looks blue, whatever. It's a command line thing. And if you open up Terminal on your Mac, you're going to have something very similar. Now, to run a local server, it's not necessarily just built in. You might have to, I'm going to teach you one way to do it. There's a few ways. I'm going to use something called Python to do it. So first thing you might want to do is just type in Python and see if this happens, if something pops up and it comes to this little kind of prompt. That means you have Python installed, and the rest of this is going to be really easy. If Python is not installed, then you're going to have to find a way to install it. So how do we actually quit this? Quit. Okay. Now, if you need to install Python, you might just want to look up install Python Windows or install Python Mac. Okay. So, and you're going to find some pretty easy instructions. You're probably just going to have to download something and install it, and that'll be that. And then you'll close PowerShell or Terminal, you'll open it up again, and then you'll type Python, and that kind of thing will happen. And then you can press quit. Okay, so once you have Python installed, and leave comments if you're, like send me a note if you're having trouble doing that. If you do have it installed, then there's a couple things we need to know about the command line. We're not going to go in depth in this. You're going to get to know the command line a lot more as you become a programmer further down the road. But I'm trying to keep this very, very minimal to just do enough to get this working. The first thing we're going to have to do is navigate to our directory. So you can see here I'm in the root drive C /users/my username, which is Tempra. And then I know if I was to open that actually up on my computer, and I go to, if I just go to File Explorer, and then I go to the C drive, and I go to Users, and I go to Tempra, I'm in the same place. And now I know that my stuff is in the Mapster and then Teach directory. So what I do is I use this command cd. That's just, I don't know exactly what it stands for, something directory, but cd, and then I go Mapster, and then I go Teach. And what I'm doing is I'm typing in the first few letters, and then I'm pressing tab, and it checks. It's like, oh, is there anything that starts with TE? Oh, this one does Teach, and it just goes to it. So you type in Mapster/Teach, and then once I go there, I can type ls, and that gives me the list of the different files and folders. ls is for list. And it gives me the list of different files and folders that are in that directory. Now I'm going into the Mapster Teach directory, and then I'm going to list again, and then I'm going into GIS for beginners, which is for us. I'm listing again. Then I go to 5 sample project, listing again. Now I'm going to 2 loading data. So I'm going into a very deep subdirectory, but you don't need to go this far. You probably don't have so many folders. So you can just, cd to the directory where you have an index.html that you're going to be working on this with, or download the sample code from the GitHub or wherever you're using this, and put it in a directory that's relatively easy to get to. Now you can see that's where we are. We are at this specific place, and now I'm going to be able to run my Python script that's going to create a little server. So this is a script that's just worth writing down somewhere, putting on a notepad, putting somewhere near your computer. It's in Windows, it's Python-m http.server 8000. I'll just stop this from being line broken so you can see it clearly. Python http server 8000. And when I run that, it will say this, serving HTTP on port 8000. Okay. On Mac, it's Python and then -m again, simple HTTP server. Make sure you pay attention to the capitals, 8000. And that will work on Mac. If I put it on Windows, it just says it doesn't work. So I'm going to do the Windows one, and we get this little serving HTTP. Okay, so now what we can do is we can kind of leave this. This has to stay open. If you close it, it will end the thing. But we can go now to a thing called localhost 8000, like this on your computer. Localhost 8000. And that will open up. Now you're running like a little server on your computer, very light. And what it's doing is it's just running from that directory. So it's like inside that specific directory, that's now the root of the web server. So all the files are like index.html is the basic file, which is why it shows right away. If we changed it to a different file name, let's just do that. Change it, well, I can just do rename here. Rename this to, sample.html. Okay, and we reload, it'll say, oh, well, index.html is the default that it's normally looking for, like any web server, but it doesn't find it, so it lists them. And we could click on sample.html and then it would load. So we now have this little web server running. I'm going to change this back to index. And you can see it's /sample.html. Although if I just go to this, index.html doesn't require that. It just always knows to do that by default. Okay, so as long as you have that little server running, let's just quickly look at the fetch calls. Okay, this is another bit of code that you're basically just going to get used to pasting. There's a little bit of complication with it, but you don't really need to pay attention to this part of it, really. We do fetch, and then because we're just getting the file name here, so we're getting it from this current directory, which is what this // means, although I could put just /, it doesn't really matter. /usstates.json, that's our shapefile type geography file. And then I'm getting the McDonald's per state JSON. And we saw before we were getting a CORS error. Now there's no more CORS errors. It just loads. If we go to the network tab in our little console, we can see it actually does load them. It loads this US state JSON, loads the McDonald's per state. And I also console log them after so we can see that they are loaded. I had to do this other stuff, .then, response.json with this little thing, then response. So this, just copy this in. You don't really have to know too much. Once you're farther in about, what are fetch calls and fetching different types of data other than JSONs, maybe you can learn about this. But for this meantime, this is what you see 90% of the time when you're doing web development, is this basic pattern. And inside here, we have access to the actual data. So, okay, that's basically fetching the data. So converting the data to JSON, setting up the local web server so we're able to fetch the data. And now you have a more advanced type of local environment. We're not going to make it more advanced than this. This is where it's going to end at this point. So you've used the command line a bit. Hopefully you didn't lose anything of your soul in trying to figure out the command line. And we'll go on to the next one now where we'll actually start adding the shapes to the map.